One woman. 19 sales. 8 months. In Charleston's oldest auction records, there's something that shouldn't exist. The same woman, identified by identical physical descriptions and unusual birthmark, sold 19 separate times between March and November 1844. Each buyer, a prominent member of Charleston society. Each sale, commanding higher prices than the last. And here's the kicker. Every single buyer resold her within days, often at massive losses, citing only one reason: unsuitable. In 1891, city officials quietly removed these pages from public view. In 1923, they sealed them with a single note: requires gubernatorial approval, public interest concerns. This is the story of what really happened at Ryan's Mart in 1844, and why 19 of Charleston's most powerful men were destroyed by a woman they thought they could own. Subscribe right now if you're into mysteries they tried to bury. Hit that bell. Drop a comment telling me where you're from, because what you're about to hear isn't just impossible. It's about what happens when a system that dehumanizes people suddenly forces the powerful to see what they've been doing. Charleston, 1844. Spring fog rolling in from the harbor. Auction houses operating with mechanical regularity. And one woman about to give 19 men an education they'd never forget. Let's talk about Delphine. Thomas Gadsden managed Ryan's Mart, one of Charleston's most prestigious auction houses, with the precision of a banker, which he had been before entering the slave trade in 1837. At 42, Gadsden was known for his meticulous ledgers. Names, ages, physical descriptions, prices, buyer info. His records were used in legal disputes and estate settlements. The guy was thorough. March 19, 1844. A seller Gadsden had never met walked in. Nathaniel Claiborne, claiming to represent a Savannah estate, brought papers documenting ownership of a woman from dissolved household staff. The woman stood apart from others awaiting sale. Her bearing suggested education, unusual for the enslaved. Her expression, carefully neutral in a way that spoke of practice control. Gadsden recorded her details. Approximately 28 years old, literate, experienced in household management, fluent in French, skilled in needlework and music, and an unusual birthmark on her left shoulder blade, 3 dots forming a perfect triangle. He assigned her inventory number 84 to 473 and noted the name, Delphine. The auction proceeded normally at first, but then the bidding went absolutely insane. Colonel William Hainsworth opened at $800, already extraordinary for a female slave. Hampton Pinckney immediately countered with $1,000. The bidding escalated rapidly, way beyond any rational economic calculation. When the hammer finally fell, Robert Drayton had paid $2,800. That's roughly 10 times the typical price for a skilled female slave. Other planters exchanged glances but said nothing. Gadsden documented it all. Drayton arranged transport to his plantation and left. 3 days later, Nathaniel Claiborne walked back into Ryan's Mart with the same woman. Fresh papers authorizing resale. Gadsden's composure cracked. "Sir, I personally witnessed Colonel Drayton purchase this woman 72 hours ago. The transaction is in my ledgers." Claiborne remained calm. "Circumstances have changed. Mr. Drayton has decided she doesn't suit his household requirements. He's authorized me to handle her resale." The papers appeared legitimate. Drayton's signature, proper legal language, notary seal Gadsden recognized. Slaves were property. Property could be resold. Nothing illegal, but something felt profoundly wrong. For days later, the second auction. Bidding started at $1,000 and climbed even faster. Charles Coatsworth Pinckney bought her for $3,200. 1 week later, Claiborne returned. Same woman, same vague explanation. Unsuitable for household needs. By the fourth sale in mid-April, a pattern emerged. Each buyer was prominent with impeccable social standing. Each paid substantially more than the previous purchaser. Each resold within days through Claiborne citing unsuitability. And each transaction was perfectly legal. But here's what disturbed Gadsden most. Delphine herself maintained the same careful neutrality through every auction, answering questions politely, standing with quiet dignity, showing no reaction to escalating prices or the bizarre repetition. She seemed to expect this pattern, like the impossibility was exactly as it should be. By the sixth sale in May, Gadsden noticed something else. The buyers were changing. Robert Drayton, first buyer, rarely appeared in Charleston society anymore. His wife had left their plantation, citing health concerns. Charles Coatsworth Pinckney had withdrawn from his usual social activities. Augustus Huger had dismissed his overseer and was personally managing his plantation for the first time in 20 years, refusing all visitors. The prices kept climbing. By July, Delphine sold for $6,000 to Theodore Gallard. 6 skilled male field hands worth of money. 3 years' profit from a medium-sized plantation. Gadsden started keeping a private journal. The buyers are not acting rationally. They bid with intensity that transcends economic logic. They seem compelled to purchase her regardless of cost. Gadsden hired a private investigator, David Brunson, former Charleston constable. I want you to trace what happens after each sale. Contact the buyers discreetly. Find out what made them resell. Brunson worked for 3 weeks. What he reported confirmed Gadsden's worst suspicions. Not one kept her longer than 5 days. Most sent her back within 48 hours. He'd spoken with overseers and household staff. Augustus Huger had purchased her with specific instructions, work in the main house, personal attendance on his wife. But the very first evening, something happened. Huger emerged from the house at dawn, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Had the woman confined immediately. Sent word arranging her resale that same day. Theodore Gallard locked himself in his study with her for hours the first night. His body servant heard conversation, not raised voices, just talking hour after hour. When Gallard finally emerged, he looked like he'd seen the devil himself. Similar accounts from every buyer. None would discuss details. All used the same explanation. Unsuitable. All seemed fundamentally altered by whatever occurred. There's something else, Brunson said. I did some checking on Nathaniel Claiborne. Can't find any record of him operating anywhere before March 1844. No business registration. No property. No family connections. It's like he appeared specifically to handle these sales. And the woman herself? Brunson had found the Savannah estate Claiborne claimed to represent. The estate was dissolved in early 1844, exactly as stated. But there was no slave named Delphine in their holdings. The final inventory showed only 11 slaves total, all male field workers sold in January. Then where did she come from? I don't know. It's like she simply appeared with Claiborne in March with falsified documentation that somehow passes legal scrutiny. Before Gadsden could respond, they heard footsteps. The auction house should have been empty. The door opened. Nathaniel Claiborne stood there. Good evening, Mr. Gadsden. I see you've been conducting research into my business affairs. I thought we might have a conversation. Gadsden stood slowly. Brunson's hand moved toward his pistol. Your business has created considerable interest. Gadsden said carefully. 19 sales of the same individual represents an unprecedented pattern. You fulfilled your obligations admirably, Claiborne replied. Every transaction has been properly documented. I'm not aware of any statute limiting how many times property may be resold. The buyers are all prominent men who've suffered consequences, financial strain, social withdrawal. This involves more than simple dissatisfaction. Claiborne moved into the office. You're a careful man, Mr. Gadsden. You maintain excellent records. These are admirable qualities. But you're asking questions that have no satisfying answers. Brunson stepped forward. The documentation you're presenting is falsified. The woman has no legitimate origin. Whatever you're doing operates outside legal boundaries. Claiborne's expression shifted. Satisfaction mixed with acknowledgement that certain truths couldn't be avoided. What she is, Claiborne said slowly, is exactly what Charleston's elite have always desired. An acquisition that demonstrates wealth, taste, power. Someone educated, accomplished, beautiful. property that elevates the owner's status through possession. That doesn't explain why they all resell her immediately. Consider what happens when acquisition becomes reality. When these men, pillars of society, owners of vast holdings built on enslaved labor, find themselves alone with property they now control completely. Property that can speak, reason, question. Property that knows things about them. Their debts, their secrets, their cruelties, the specific ways they built fortunes through methods that shame them. Silence filled the office. She talks to them, Brunson said quietly. She converses, Claiborne corrected, about history, philosophy, the particular calculations required to value human beings as livestock, the specific decisions that lead men to purchase other humans and call it economic necessity, the precise moral cost of building wealth through suffering. She's extremely well-educated. She can discuss these topics with considerable nuance. And after these conversations, they send her back, because continuing to own her becomes unbearable, because every moment in her presence forces them confront truths they spent their lives avoiding, because she represents a mirror they cannot face. So they resell at substantial losses just to escape that confrontation. This is revenge, Gadsden said. Revenge implies anger. This is education, a demonstration of principles. The men who purchase her learn precisely what it means to own another human being, not in abstract economic terms, but in specific, intimate reality. 2 more sales remain, Claiborne said. I suggest you document them carefully, Mr. Gadsden. They may prove historically significant. The 16th sale went to James Henry Hammond, former governor of South Carolina, congressman, owner of multiple plantations totaling over 10,000 acres. Hammond paid $7,200, the highest price ever documented in Gadsden's ledgers for any slave. 4 days later, Claiborne returned with resale authorization. But something was different. The factor's usual composure had fractured, tension around his eyes, tightness suggesting stress or anticipation. Gadsden examined Hammond's signature, rushed, uneven like the hand had been shaking. Additional notations filled margins. Calculations crossed out. Notes attempting to quantify something that resisted quantification. What did she say to him? Claiborne met his gaze directly for the first time. She recited his specific financial debts, methods he's used to extract productivity from slaves, methods that violate South Carolina law in ways that would destroy his political career if made public. She discussed certain relationships that would scandalize his family, and she asked him questions about how he reconciles his public advocacy for Southern honor with the particular cruelties he's inflicted on people he owns. Former Governor Hammond found the conversation deeply educational. The 17th sale attracted an unusual crowd. Word had spread about the remarkable woman sold repeatedly. Men came specifically to acquire her, not knowing why previous buyers resold her. The winning bidder, John Calhoun Preston, a 34-year-old planter whose uncle was John C. Calhoun, recently deceased senator and one of slavery's most powerful defenders. Preston paid $8,400, a figure embodying all the accumulated madness of the preceding sales. 3 days later, Claiborne returned. But this time, Delphine accompanied him, and Gadsden saw immediately that something had changed. Her careful neutrality had shifted into something harder, more focused. She looked directly at Gadsden for the first time. Her eyes held intelligence that seemed to pierce through whatever comfortable illusions he'd maintained. Mr. Preston discovered certain incompatibilities, Claiborne said. However, for this transaction, there will be specific requirements regarding the buyer. The 18th sale must go to someone with direct authority over this auction house. Someone whose business depends on facilitating these transactions. Someone who's documented every sale meticulously. Claiborne's meaning was perfectly clear. The 18th sale must be to you, Mr. Gadsden. That's impossible. I'm the auctioneer. I don't purchase merchandise. You have assets. This building, your business, your reputation. You could arrange necessary financing if you chose. Why would I choose to do so? I've watched 17 men purchase her and regret it. Delphine spoke for the first time in Gadsden's presence. Educated voice. Precise. Because you spent 7 years facilitating sales of human beings while maintaining careful documentation that allows you to pretend you're simply a professional conducting business. Because you've made your living from other people's suffering while telling yourself you're just a middleman, that you're not responsible for the system itself. Because you deserve to experience what it means to actually own someone rather than just processing the paperwork. Her words struck with surgical precision. I won't do it. Then the pattern ends incomplete, Claiborne said. The 19th sale will never occur. Of course, that means certain information about your business practices might become public. He detailed private arrangements Gadsden had made, documentation he'd falsified, specific ways he'd helped planners avoid legal restrictions. Gadsden's blood turned to ice. The accusations were accurate. Nothing other auctioneers didn't do, but expose a public scrutiny, especially abolitionist newspapers in the North. Those practices would destroy him. For 3 days, Gadsden struggled. In the end, he made the choice he knew he would make from the moment Claiborne presented the ultimatum. He secured loans against everything. On October 19, 1844, he purchased Delphine for $9,000, everything he'd accumulated over 7 years. That night, she waited in his office. Claiborne had departed, leaving them alone. Sit down, Mr. Gadsden. We have much to discuss. She began with simple questions about a career, but gradually they became more specific, more pointed. She asked about particular transactions. A girl sold away from her mother, a man with injuries Gadsden had concealed, a woman who'd attempted suicide the night before her sale. I have excellent memory for names and faces. You've sold approximately 3,200 people over 7 years. Shall we discuss them? And she did, one by one. Names, ages, descriptions. Families separated. Children sold away. She knew details that shouldn't have been possible. Private information from sales records, whispered conversations. As dawn approached, Gadsden sat no longer maintaining composure. She hadn't raised her voice, hadn't accused, had simply asked questions and recited facts. But the accumulation stripped away every justification he'd built over years. You told yourself you were just facilitating commerce, that you weren't responsible, that if you didn't do this work, someone else would. These are the same justifications every participant in evil uses. I didn't create slavery. No, but you participated with meticulous precision. You documented it. You refined it. You made it more efficient. You turned human suffering into neat columns in your ledgers and profited while maintaining the fiction that you were somehow separate from the evil you facilitated. What are you? Does it matter? Whether I'm exactly what I appear to be or something else entirely, the facts remain the same. You spent 7 years as an instrument of systematic cruelty. She moved toward the door. You'll authorize my resale tomorrow, and you'll spend the rest of your life knowing exactly what you were complicit in. Every time you close your eyes, you'll see their faces. The 3,200 people whose names I recited tonight. You won't forget them. I've made certain of that. Gadsden authorized a resale. Claiborne prepared for the 19th and final transaction. Who will be the last buyer? Someone who represents the culmination of this education. Someone whose position embodies everything this system has created. Someone whose family has defended this institution through philosophy, through law, through elaborate moral justifications that have poisoned generations. The final auction was scheduled for October 26. Charleston's elite filled the auction house. Men whose families had shaped South Carolina since colonial days. When Delphine entered with Claiborne, a palpable shift occurred. Fear mixed with fascination, desire complicated by dread. Bidding opened at $5,000 and climbed rapidly. When it reached $10,000, Langdon Chivis Jr. entered. At 39, Chivis represented Charleston aristocracy at its apex. Old wealth, political connections. His family had defended slavery not just as economic necessity, but as a positive good. Chivis raised his hand. $12,000. Brief silence. That sum was insanity. $13,000, called Augustus Ravenel. $15,000. Chivis responded without pause. $17,000, Chivvis said, his tone suggesting he continued regardless of amount. Other bidders fell silent. Chivvis had claimed his purchase. $17,000. Going once. Going twice. Sold to Mr. Langdon Chivvis, Jr. The hammer fell, and something fundamental shifted in the room's atmosphere. For days later, urgent letter arrived from Chivvis. Handwriting barely legible. Gadsden, the woman is unsuitable, utterly unsuitable. I cannot, the things she knows, I require her immediate removal. I don't care about financial recovery. Just remove her. But before Gadsden could respond, different news arrived. Langdon Chivvis, Jr. had filed manumission papers. He was freeing Delphine, granting complete legal freedom, and providing funds for transport north to Pennsylvania. The Chivvis family didn't free slaves. They defended the institution, wrote essays arguing for its moral necessity. For Langdon Chivvis to suddenly manumit a woman he'd purchased days earlier, for whom he paid an astronomical sum, defied every principle his family represented. In the margins of the manumission documents, Chivvis had written fragments. She recited the names. All of them. People my family has owned across 4 generations. She knew their stories. What happened to them. The specific cruelties. She knew details that exist in no records. She asked me how I justified it, made me articulate the philosophical arguments I've used to defend the system, then showed me with precise logic how each argument collapsed, how every justification was elaborate self-deception designed to allow me to profit from suffering while maintaining my self-image as a moral person. I cannot bear this knowledge. Freedom is the smallest gesture toward inadequate but necessary. Langdon Chivvis died in March 1847 at age 44. Heart failure, officially, but those who knew him recognized that whatever killed him had begun that night when he sat alone with Delphine. As for Delphine herself, she vanished from all historical records after her manumission. The documents show she received funds for transport north and legal confirmation of freedom. After that, nothing. No census records. No property holdings. No marriage records or death certificates. It was as if she'd accomplished whatever purpose brought her to Charleston and then simply ceased to exist. Gadsden survived until 1863. In his final months, he attempted multiple times to write a comprehensive account. Stacks of incomplete manuscripts survived him, each abandoned as inadequate. His final attempt began, "I have spent 19 years trying to understand what happened during those 8 months. Whether she was exactly what she appeared to be, a woman of extraordinary intelligence who somehow gained power over Charleston's elite, or something else entirely remains unclear. What is certain is that 19 men learned truths about themselves that destroyed their peace permanently. We were educated about complicity, about the specific ways we'd chosen to profit from systematic cruelty while maintaining comfortable self-images. That education was more destructive than any physical punishment could have been." The manuscript ended mid-sentence. In 1891, concerned about how Northern publications might use these records as anti-Southern propaganda, city officials removed several pages documenting Delphine's 19 sales. The pages were placed in restricted archives where they remain today, accessible only with governmental approval that's rarely granted. The official explanation suggests clerical errors. But Thomas Gadsden built his reputation on precision. What remains is whisper and speculation. Stories about the woman sold 19 times. About conversations that lasted entire nights. About powerful men who emerged fundamentally broken, their certainty shattered, their comfortable participation in systematic evil transformed into unbearable knowledge. So here's my question. Was Delphine exactly what she appeared to be? Or was she something else entirely? Justice taking a form we can barely comprehend? 19 men thought they could own her. Instead, she taught them what ownership really means. And that education destroyed them more thoroughly than any violence could have. Drop your theories in the comments. If this story made you think about power, complicity, and the systems we participate in without questioning, subscribe, hit that bell, and share this. Sometimes the darkest mysteries are the ones hiding in plain sight, the ones that powerful people tried to bury. the ones that force us to confront uncomfortable truths about history and ourselves. Until next time, remember that the past is never truly buried. It's always waiting for those brave enough to dig.